For the purposes of this bootcamp session on marketing, we are going to focus on the hard aspects. In other words, the numbers, the budgets, the activities, etc., which occupy a marketing manager's life. Let's leave the creative aspects of marketing to the creative people, because they're much better at that anyway, right? So we're going to focus on management and marketing. And in the last few videos, we talked a lot about the facts and numbers necessary to run a business. And to continue on that theme of hard facts and data, in this session, we'll also focus on what the real numbers mean for marketing managers. After we have absorbed a lot of hard data, which every marketing manager or manager needs to know, in fact, we'll end the session by discussing issues which are more strategic for marketing. So let's begin. The first hard question I have for you is, what percentage of a company's budget do you think should be invested in marketing? Well, to help answer that question, we only have to look at the most recent Forrester research on companies' marketing budgets. And Forrester, by the way, are one of the leading research organizations in the world studying business and different sectors of business and functions, etc. And according to Forrester, B2B firms invest 7.5% to 8.5% of their revenue or sales on marketing. And B2C firms, on the other hand, invest about 9 to 9.5% of their revenues on marketing. And when we say revenue, for the purpose of our discussion, it could be compared to total sales or turnover, as they call it in the UK and some other countries. Of course, we must also remember that those marketing investments will go up and down depending on market conditions and individual company conditions. But based on the Forrester research findings, we could say that companies in general are investing between 7.5 to 9.5 cents of every dollar or euro of revenue in marketing. And this figure is growing by about plus 4% every year. Well, that's interesting, but there's even more interesting data for us to understand. For example, investments by companies in digital marketing are growing faster than any other marketing activity. And that fact is very important for us to understand, and because of that, digital marketing is something we will discuss much more in the next bootcamp session, which will focus just on digital marketing. But for now, to help us understand marketing in general, let's first start about discussing the difference between B2B and B2C sectors, because these two forms of business are important. B2B companies mean business to business, and is a situation where one business makes a commercial transaction with another business. And that's why we call them business to business. B2C, on the other hand, refers to a situation where a business sells to consumers, products or services, consumers like you and I, and that's why we call them business to consumer, B2C. Of course, some companies might have both B2B and B2C activities, and that makes marketing for them even more complicated. So based on the data we see in this research field, we can see that approximately 7.5 to 9.5% of budgets are spent in marketing. And that amount is currently increasing at about 4% every year, or per annum, as we say in business. Now let's consider another important marketing hard data question. On what activities should we spend that marketing budget? So if we have 7.5 to 9.5% of revenues available, what should we spend it on? Well, the answer to this question is a little more challenging, and the reason it's more challenging is because we could spend our marketing budget on many different things. For example, advertising or market development, etc. And also the answer to this question will depend a lot on our business activities. For example, are we a B2B company or a B2C company? Because the distinction between B2B and B2C is much more important when answering this question. And I'll explain this a little more. In the B2B sector, that was business to business, we do have quite good data from Forrester which tells us how they spend that money. And that data tells us more about how B2B companies are involved in marketing activities with their business customers. And as a matter of fact, it seems that B2B companies invest over 50% of their marketing budgets in just 5 different areas. And these 5 areas include, first of all, which has the largest amount of the marketing budget, trade shows, conferences, and events. And those activities represent some 14% of the total marketing spend. The second largest area is in the digital marketing and digital advertising, which represents around 10% of total marketing budgets for B2B companies. The third and fourth and fifth areas all represent around 9% each of marketing budgets, and they are content marketing, which means creating and distributing content, B2B customers, websites to support B2B customers, and direct marketing, which means marketing directly to a customer. So in other words, these 5 areas for B2B companies represent over 50% of total marketing budgets in those B2B companies in general. In the B2C sector, or business to market, or business markets directly to consumers, it's harder to see how those marketing budgets break down into different areas. But a recent McKinsey and Company study in this field called the Global Media Report does offer some insights into marketing spend for B2C companies. And according to McKinsey, digital marketing represents 42% of marketing spend for B2C companies. And remember, that was around 10% for B2B companies. But in fact, the McKinsey data shows that B2C companies spend the largest part of their marketing budgets on traditional marketing activities. And those traditional marketing activities are something like 60% of the total marketing budget. Or let's say, to be exact, 58%. So 58% is traditional marketing, which includes like TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, and advertising. McKinsey also provide detailed data on global advertising spend by B2C companies, and in 2016, the top 7 categories of spending for B2C companies included: first, at almost 40% of the total budget, is television. TV is growing at about 5% a year. Second, is digital. 35% of the total spend and growing around 12-13%. Newspapers are third at some 12% with no growth, followed by magazines, etc. What this means is that currently almost 50%, if not more, of advertising spending by marketing is within traditional areas such as TV, newspapers, radios, magazines, and cinemas for B2C companies. But according to McKinsey, by 2019-2020, digital will represent over 20% of total advertising spend for B2C companies. And even more importantly, mobile marketing is soon expected to become the most important digital marketing platform. Now here is where the data begins to get a bit blurred, and it gets blurred because increasingly online and offline marketing are viewed as one channel by marketers, and they often refer to this blurring of marketing channels as omni-channel or multi-channel marketing. And what multi-channel marketing means is that marketers, in particular B2C marketers, are increasingly using at the same time and with a similar message multiple channels, for example TV plus mobile plus social. And this trend towards omni-channel or multi-channel marketing is creating additional channels for marketers in all sectors of business.